things set up here the right way. Bear with me, people. Appreciate y'all. And let's see now.
It's no secret.
And I'm going to broadcast that out first on Facebook. And just try to get a little bit of attention and maybe a few people in the room. A part of the show. Your family tree. Show you how to get started. Great. And I'm just going to share that right there to my profile on Facebook. And then I'm going to share it with followers on Fireside. Select all. Share it to 4,267. That is awesome considering I've only been on there a couple of months. Turn off the chatbot music. Yeah, turn my volume up a little bit and have a peek back here on Wisdom to see who is listening. And on Wisdom, just want to give everybody a little reminder that starting at the same time, maybe bad timing on my part, but Cecilia is doing kudos on Wisdom, on the Wisdom app. You can actually find us on the Wisdom app at wisdom.app/Bryden Farm, BRIDEN Farm. And you can find our website at brydenfarm.com and our genealogy website, growingyourfamilytree.com. And Monday nights, tonight, at 9 Atlantic, 8 Eastern, we do our Growing Your Family Tree talk, where I help you get started for free, finding family and ancestry. And if you have someone you'd like for me to look for, join the conversation. Use the button on Wisdom, or join us on Fireside Chat, and you can actually be part of the broadcast, which is actually probably a little bit the better way for this particular talk. I've been trying to figure out, no, not Wisdom's fault, but my fault, because I have been trying to figure out how I can best serve both communities at the same time and not have to do the talk twice and actually make it better for all who are involved. And the best way that I can do for now is this, where you hear me on both platforms. Unfortunately, over on Wisdom, you will only hear me, you won't hear the guests on Fireside. But send it a second invite there. And I do see that there's been a few people walk by or maybe listening in on Wisdom, which is great. And so, getting started for free. If you have questions, hit the join the conversation button or request to speak on Fireside, on Wisdom on Fireside. So, what I encourage everyone to do is to go to legacyfamilytree.com. And there you will see the standard edition, which is a database where you can enter your name, your parents' names, grandparents' names, great-grandparents, and so on as you find them. And that standard edition is a free download, so it gives you a free database to work with. The upgrade, I think, is $35. I used the free edition for probably my first 10 years of researching, so I encourage everybody to get started for free. Why spend money if you don't need to? And once you have your free database, you can start entering your information. I mean, the best place to start, regardless of who you are or what you want to do with your information, is to talk to your family, especially if you have grandparents or uncles and aunts or parents or great uncles and aunts. And if not, perhaps people in the community who knew them, knew your grandparents. Enter the information that you find in your free database that you can get at legacyfamilytree.com. Now, if you are researching, go to familysearch.org. So the database is legacyfamilytree.com, and the familysearch.org. And that is a website. I like to give credit where credit is due. That is a website, a service provided by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I am not a member, but I do appreciate the work that they've done and this free website that they provide. And the main place I go on there is to the search function at the top of the page. Click on search, and then click on records. Now there's tons of other information on here, and it all bears your investigation. But click on search and then click on records. And the person that I'm going to do a little bit of research on, just as we kind of walk around, we'll say, and get our bearings and give you some ideas to how to go about searching, is somebody who I talked to through the week, and actually it might have even been last week, and they asked me to look for information on Leroy Huxley, and I did some preliminary research, and I'm just going to I don't know if I actually looked for that on Family Search. I'm thinking I probably did. So Leroy Huxley, Hawksley, and I do believe that he was born in 1920. And if you have a year to put in, that's definitely helpful. And here on Family Search, when you put in that name and bring up the search results, I'm working with a slow laptop. A little bit tongue-in-cheek here, but if anybody wants to buy me a laptop, you're more than welcome. Maybe getting time for me to get a new one. Even though this one's only a couple of years old, it just didn't exactly hold up from day one. I probably should have sent it back. Not one of my strong suits. But so the first thing that I see when I go to familysearch.org and put in the name Leroy Huxley with the birth of 1920 is I see a link to an obituary for Leroy passed the 3rd of July, 2010. And he was in Oxford, Massachusetts. And his obituary appeared in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette. Now, the reason I tell you all that is that's just some of the information that are type of records that are available on FamilySearch.org. Now, in addition to that, let me scroll down and see what else I can find. Genealogy Bank, obituaries. Okay, there's another link to the obituary. About 4 different links to obituaries. Now, one of those links to, and this was another site that I actually already have open, but I wanted to be sure to see if the link was there. Links to another free website, which is called findagrave.com. And on findagrave.com, it has a picture of Leroy Huxley, and it has links to his parents' headstones. It shows his headstone as well, and also his wife's name and dates are on the same stone. And it also shows two of his siblings. So now, if we couldn't find information for Leroy on Family Search, then we could start to look for information for his parents, as well as those 2 siblings, as we start to put that family group together. Now, because he was born in 1920, I do see a link for, and I'm a little bit jealous because in the US, in the United States, the 1950 census is now available online. It's actually available at FamilySearch.org. Here in Canada, which is, I'm at Bryden Farm, which is our homesteading farm here in Bear River, Nova Scotia, Canada. And here, our most recent public census is 1921. We're actually waiting for this year when our 1931 census will be made available. But to be honest, I'll still be a little jealous of those in the US who are able to access census records from 1950. Ours aren't quite that readily available. And I'm just looking here at the 1950 census. Shows Leroy. It shows his wife, Ruby, and Ruby is listed as his wife, Ruby A. LaPearl. His wife is listed over on Find a Grave as well. And I'm just curious, if we open that link to Ruby, sometimes when we're looking at a wife's information, her photo is there, so that's nice for family that's looking for that, and sometimes that's a nice surprise that we find. And yes, it actually lists Ruby's parents and one of her siblings. So there again, just with our starting at FamilySearch.org, we've been able to find a fair bit of information, all for free. So get your database, go to LegacyFamilyTree.com, download the free download for their standard edition, start entering your names in that. Then go to FamilySearch.org. At the top, click on Search, and then Records, and that will take you to the historical records and others. So we seen an obituary from there, we saw a census record from there, and we saw Find a Grave, which not only showed us the information for Leroy Huxley, but also for his wife, and not only for them, but for a couple of his siblings, one of her siblings, and the parents for each of them, which gets us back to that next generation. So there is how you begin your research, researching, finding your family members, your ancestry in a similar way. Now, if there's anyone listening who would like for me to look for information for you, please feel free to, on Wisdom, click Join the Conversation button, and I'd be glad to see if I can find something. It's not always that easy. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, but I have over 30 years of research experience, and this has been my passion for my lifelong passion, I would say, for seems that way. And if I can help you to find your family or ancestry, that's what I'm here to help with. And so those are the steps for getting started for free. You go to legacyfamilytree.com, download the free database. Go to familysearch.org and click on search and then records. Now, a caution when using familysearch.org or Ancestry or MyHeritage or any website at all, what I want you to do is make use of all the information that's there, but always try to find a source record, like a cemetery record, a headstone, a census record, a military record, something like that. Don't just copy information that you find through a hint or on somebody else's tree without taking time to find the source. And then do yourself a favor. Don't get ahead of yourself. Take your time. Enter your source information. I can tell you from the time that I started when I was 30 years ago, a little bit younger, and even, to be honest, sometimes now, I'll get excited tracing down information, and I think, oh, I'll go back and get that source. Well, I don't do that as much now as I used to, but I still do it, and I caution you not to. Always take time to enter your sources as you go. Sometimes, when you think you're going to go back and find that source, you just never find it again. I remember reading the obituary for one of my grandfathers, possibly a great-grandfather, not sure who it was. And there was something written in his obituary that indicated that he may be a Freemason. And I have never been able to find that obituary again. It was in an archives. I've been back to that archives a couple of times. I've tried to find that information, and I've never found it. Had I sourced it, had I put that source in my database, or at that point in my notes, because I probably didn't even have a database, I would have known where to go back to get it. So I do caution you to always make sure that you add in your sources as you do your work. It'll definitely help you down the road. And so, again, your free database is at legacyfamilytree.com. A great free resource site is familysearch.org. You can also go to findagrave.com. And if it is somebody who is more recently passed, my next go-to, and the other free site that is going to help you in your research, is simply Google. And we would do obit, OBIT, short for obituary. Now, I already know, I'm going to have a quick look here. From Find a Grave, we know that Leroy Huxley passed in 2010. And let's see, Ruby, his wife, passed in 2011. So let's take in Google, and we're going to put in the word obit, OBIT, and then Leroy Huxley. And I really don't know if it's going to come up or not, because I'm not sure that I've done this. But yes, there it is, Oxford, Massachusetts. And that comes up, and that actually goes to a website called legacy.com, and that will list the obituary. Now, had we not found him in the 1950 census record already, had we not found him on Find a Grave, we could have simply gone to Google first and done obit, search for obit Leroy Huxley. Now, the interesting thing on that is, if it is what I'm going to refer to as a proper obituary, which means that it actually contains some valuable information, what we're going to see there is Leroy Huxley, 90, so it gives his age, and died June 29th, 2010. Well, we now know that if he died in 2010 and he was 90 years old, that he was born in 1920. So that would be a clue for us to go to FamilySearch.org or to search for that in a census or other record. He passed away at St. Vincent's Hospital in Worcester, Mass. He leaves his wife of 69 years, Ruby A. LaPearl, which we already saw on Find a Grave. But if we had to come to Google first, we would have had this information. Now, did you notice? A wife of 69 years. He died in 2010. So, that would go back to maybe 1941, I think. Trying to bring up my calculator here. So it says wife of 69 years, and he passed in 2010. And so 2010 subtract 69. So we now know that Ruby and Leroy were married 69 years previous to 2010. And if we do that math, it takes us back to 1941. So, knowing that in the US, the 1950 census is available, then just from this obituary, we would be able to go back and look for that information, which we already saw tonight. But even if we had just started with Google, it would have given us this information to add in to our search, helping to narrow it down and giving us perhaps a better result with more information. If you are listening on Wisdom and you'd like me to look for a family member or help you get started or perhaps find an ancestor, click the Join the Conversation button. And we are also broadcasting over on Fireside. You're welcome to join us there if you like. And so, reading on in this obituary, let's see what else we can find. He had two sons, Alan and his wife, the Reverend Maureen Huxley, of Hingham, Connecticut, and Gary and his wife, Terry, of Webster. That'd be Webster, Mass. 5 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, a sister, Goldina Beals. Now, if we wanted to, we could, if we had trouble finding information for Leroy, we could also look for information on Goldina, and it says also that he was predeceased by a brother, Burley, and so we could also look for that obituary and information in the census records. So all of this information that's recorded in obituaries can be very helpful. Now, as we read on in that obituary, he was born in Mars Hill, Maine, the son of Guy and Laura, in her maiden name in brackets, Blackton, and moved to Oxford in 1937. So if we know that he was in Oxford, Massachusetts, I believe, Oxford, Maine, possibly. I'd have to look closer at that. But we could narrow our search down. When we go to familysearch.org, we can enter in that information. And so we know that he would probably be, most likely, it might have moved, but if he went to Oxford in 1937, we know that he would most likely be there in a 1940 census as well as the 1950 census that we already found. He completed an apprenticeship in carpentry at Worcester Boys Trade High School and owned and operated Calroy Inc. in Oxford for 30 years. He was a member of the former trustee of the Oxford United Methodist Church. So, if we wanted, we could go look for church records. Hogsley Drive in Oxford Industrial Park was named in honor of his having served for over 40 years on the Oxford Development and Industrial Commission. He was a member of the American Legion, so it would probably be Legion Records, Post 58, and also served as a technical sergeant in the Army Air Force during World War II. So they're most likely military records that we could look into for Leroy as well. He was a flight engineer and aerial gunner on 50 B-17 mission over Europe while stationed in Italy, followed by air rescue service in the Pacific while stationed in the Philippines. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross during the European campaign. We thank him for his service. In retirement, he enjoyed travel in his trailer, membership in the Holiday Ramblers, and winters in Zephyr Hills, Florida. I believe it's Zephyr Hills. A funeral service will be held at 10 a.m. or was held on Saturday, July 3rd, 2010 at the Oxford United Methodist Church, 465 Main Street, Oxford. Burial at the North Cemetery, Oxford. Now, had we not found the Find a Grave record first, we could have taken that information and gone to findagrave.com for free and come up with that on there, which we already did, but we could have just simply started with Google, because there are times that we can't find somebody in the census and other records, that perhaps the best place for us to start in some cases is actually Google, doing the abbreviation OBIT for obituary and then the person's name. And so this is a very well written obituary with lots of valuable information, and that is how you get started for free doing your research. Again, on Wisdom, if you are listening and you have any questions or comments, would like to provide any feedback, or have me look for someone for you, please click join the conversation button, and I'd be glad to have a look. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find, but I can certainly try. If you are listening to this recording on Wisdom or on Fireside Chat later, please go to our website, growingyourfamilytree.com, and you will see my contact information there. And you can also go to Amazon, where I have 2 self-published books. One of those is Growing Your Family Tree, Sorting the Wheat from the Chaff, and the other, celebrating part of my ancestry, is From Irish Roots. Both of those are available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle edition. Again, if there is anyone on Wisdom who is listening and would like for me to look for family or ancestry for you, please click on Join the Conversation button, and I'd be glad to see what I can find. And with that, I believe I'm going to call it an evening. And I do thank you for listening. And also, because I also have bridenfarm.com, BRIDEN farm.com. I do, and that's our homesteading farm here in Bear River, Nova Scotia. On Thursday evenings at 9 Atlantic, 8 Eastern, I do the Bryden Farm Fireside Chat, and do that on Fireside as well as on the Wisdom app. So I'll give one more call out. If you have any questions, would like to know how to get started for free, and are just maybe tuning in, or if you have family or ancestors that you'd like for me to help find, if you're on Wisdom, click Join the Conversation button. And otherwise, I'm going to call it an evening, and thank you for stopping by or listening in. And I'm going to close on